Picture this for a second. You're stuck in the absolute thick of Bangalore traffic. I mean, the horns are blaring nonstop, the exhaust fumes are rising, and the heat is just radiating right off the pavement. You pull out your phone because you're desperate to actually get moving. You check Uber, and it shows this frustrating 15-minute wait. And hey, that's assuming the driver doesn't just cancel on you, right? So you check Ola, the price is surging like crazy, and it's going to cost way more than you expected for such a tiny trip. You are literally just standing there on the sidewalk, watching your time and your money completely evaporate. But then, you tap a different app. Suddenly, a Rapido bike weaves effortlessly through all that gridlock and arrives right where you're standing in just 3 minutes. You hop on, and finally, you are moving.
That exact everyday scenario completely disrupted a billion-dollar industry. Think about the contrast here. On one side, you have the absolute giants, Uber and Ola. And sure, they brought incredible innovation to the world, nobody's denying that, but in super dense, congested Indian cities, relying on them often meant a painful 15-minute wait and really high unexpected costs. Then, on the totally opposite end of the spectrum, you have Rapido, a 3-minute wait and highly affordable fare. It is a massive difference. Today, Rapido completes millions of rides across India and has become one of the most formidable threats to those very same ride-hailing heavyweights. But here is the truly surprising part that we're going to unpack in this explainer today. Rapido didn't achieve this massive success by trying to build a better taxi company.
Not at all. They won by changing the game entirely. Welcome to our deep dive into exactly how Rapido dominated urban commuting. In this explainer, we're going to look really closely at how daily commuters save incredible amounts of time and money through bike taxi services. We'll explore how one nimble company saw a massive, glaring gap in the market that everyone else completely missed, and how their brilliant strategy of targeting short-distance trips and mastering last-mile connectivity flipped the whole industry upside down. Let's quickly run through our agenda for today. First, India's urban traffic problem. Second, the four-wheeler limitation. Third, Rapido's two-wheeled solution. Fourth, winning the last mile. And finally, expanding the mobility empire.
Okay, diving into Section 1, India's urban traffic problem. To truly wrap our heads around Rapido's insane success, we have to start with the fundamental nightmare of congestion. I mean, Indian cities like Bengaluru, Mumbai, and Delhi are consistently ranked among the most congested in the entire world. The infrastructure is just incredibly strained by the sheer density of vehicles on the road. And this brings us to a really critical metric, the 2 to 5 kilometer journey. For short trips within this range, booking a traditional car often makes absolutely zero sense. Why? Well, because cars get hopelessly stuck in traffic. And because they get stuck, they end up costing you a lot more. The irony here is that passengers often spend more time just waiting for the car to navigate the traffic to pick them up than the actual journey even takes. Yet, the giants like Ola and Uber were primarily laser-focused on fleets of cars. They were essentially solving the physics of transportation, getting a vehicle to a person, but they weren't necessarily solving the reality of convenience. And that created a massive gap in the mobility market.
Moving right along to Section 2, the four-wheeler limitation.
So, while the major players were fighting fiercely for dominance over the four-wheeler market, they were kind of blind to how inefficient cars actually are for the vast majority of solo daily commutes in a crowded metropolis. Back in 2015, 3 entrepreneurs, Aravind Sanka, Pavan Guntupalli, and Rishikesh SR, looked at this exact scenario and asked one simple, brilliant question. Why use a 4-seater car for one person traveling a short distance? It's a fantastic question, right? Think about it. You're occupying this massive physical footprint on a crowded road, burning fuel to haul around empty seats just to move one single human being a couple of kilometers. It's incredibly inefficient when you really break it down.
The fundamental limitation of relying on traditional cabs for solitary trips in dense cities really becomes obvious when you compare the options. For a four-wheeler cab, the operating cost is inherently high. Navigation through city traffic is painfully slow, and the vehicle is obviously designed for multiple passengers. But switch over to a two-wheeler bike, the operating cost drops significantly. The navigation becomes fast and incredibly agile. And, crucially, it is perfectly designed for exactly one passenger. Motorcycles were already absolutely everywhere in India. They were cheaper to buy, they were cheaper to maintain, and they were perfect for zipping right through gridlock streets.
Let's move to Section 3, Rapido's two-wheeled solution.
Instead of trying to raise billions of dollars to buy cars and compete head-to-head with Uber and Ola, Rapido did something incredibly smart. They transformed ordinary motorcycle owners into ride providers. They called them captains, which really elevated the role. This entirely slashed operating costs. While competitors were bleeding cash fighting for car riders, Rapido practically invented an entirely new category overnight. And this strategy led to 4 key pillars that drove their massive, rapid growth. First, lower prices. For students, office workers, and daily commuters on a budget, an affordable ride is king. A Rapido ride often costs significantly less than a cab. Second, faster pickup times. Bikes can literally slip through the traffic to get to you faster. Third, they're perfect for short distances, which, as we've established, is a massive chunk of urban travel. And fourth, a huge supply of riders. Since India has one of the largest two-wheeler markets in the world, Rapido leveraged an asset millions of people already owned. This allowed them to scale at warp speed without the heavy capital investment required for cars.
You know, saving even 10 minutes can make a huge difference in crowded cities. Rapido wasn't just winning because they were cheaper. They were winning because they were literally giving people their time back. When you're rushing to punch in at work, or you're trying to make it to a college exam on time, or you're just totally exhausted and want to get home, those 10 minutes saved by a bike seamlessly navigating around a massive traffic jam, that completely changes your daily commuting experience. It turns a stressful ordeal into a breeze.
Section 4. Winning the last mile.
Because Rapido was so fast and so affordable, they were perfectly positioned to solve a very specific, incredibly frustrating problem that city planners have struggled with for decades. We're talking about last-mile connectivity. Basically, this is the final short distance of a journey. Imagine you just took a highly efficient, high-speed metro train across the city. Great, right? You get off at your station, but your actual office or your apartment is still, say, 3 kilometers away. Walking 3 kilometers in the sweltering heat or the pouring rain is just too far. But waiting 15 minutes and paying a premium to book a whole 4-seater cab for that tiny stretch feels completely unnecessary and, frankly, annoying. That exact 3-kilometer gap is the last mile. And Rapido became the absolute perfect frictionless solution for these everyday journeys. They essentially built a massive business empire thriving right in the gaps that public transit and traditional cabs left behind.
Of course, as Rapido's popularity exploded, the giants couldn't just sit back and ignore it. Both Ola and Uber eventually responded by experimenting with their own bike taxi services. But Rapido had this incredible first-mover advantage, and it already deeply ingrained itself in the culture. It's like how you don't say, search it on the internet, you just say, Google it. Well, Rapido achieved that ultimate level of brand penetration. People didn't say, book a bike taxi, they literally said, Rapido it. When consumers associate an entire category strictly with your brand name, you've secured a competitive advantage that is incredibly difficult for even well-funded rivals to break.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 5. Expanding the mobility empire.
So once you have millions of daily active users who inherently trust your app, rely heavily on your captains, and already have their payment methods saved right in your system, what do you do next? Well, you don't just stay in your lane. You expand. And that is exactly what Rapido is doing right now. They didn't stop at bike taxis. The company has aggressively expanded into auto rickshaws and even traditional cab services. They're no longer just a cute niche startup playing in the margins. By utilizing their massive existing supply of riders and their deeply loyal customer base, they have confidently entered the core businesses of Ola and Uber. And expanding into these new categories was so much easier for them because they had already won the hardest battle, earning the customer's daily habit. Now, they're challenging the industry giants directly on multiple fronts.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a phenomenal quote that really acts as the ultimate summary of Rapido's whole journey. You don't always beat market leaders by doing the same thing better. Sometimes you win by solving a different problem. It's so true. Ola and Uber were trying to solve the problem of getting a car to a passenger. Rapido stepped back and realized the actual problem for a solo commuter going 3 kilometers wasn't a lack of cars at all. It was a lack of speed, affordability, and convenience. Innovation doesn't always mean inventing some brand new shiny technology. Sometimes true innovation is simply seeing the everyday frustrating gaps in the market that everyone else has completely missed and building a bridge right over them.
So the big question is, what do you think happens next? The battle for urban transportation is far from over. Rapido completely transformed from an underdog startup into one of India's most influential and disruptive mobility platforms by totally mastering the two-wheeler commute. But as they step into the heavyweight ring with auto rickshaws and cabs, the stakes are higher than ever. Will Rapido's strategy propel them to become India's absolute #1 ride-hailing platform? Or will the massive, entrenched resources of Ola and Uber eventually push them back? It's a fascinating business case study unfolding right in front of us, out on the city streets, every single day. Keep an eye on your local traffic because the answer is being decided right now, one 3-minute ride at a time.